Hey guys, welcome back to Irregulators. I'm Josh Kasoff. This week I wanted to do something a little different. Instead of focusing on the things that the Department of Taxation has done, instead I want to look at something that they never did while they were the regulators of the cannabis industry here in Nevada. It's a program that a lot of other states are implementing, yet the Department of Taxation never did while they were our regulators.
Social equity is the term that certain legal states are using to describe how they've written regulations that are made to give special opportunities in the legal cannabis industry to those from communities most impacted by both the war on drugs and other social inequalities. Today we'll be talking about two states, Illinois and Washington, and how they've implemented social equity-based programs and how successful they've been. Alright, let's first look at the state of Lincoln. On January 1st, 2020, recreational cannabis became legal after months of their very pro-cannabis governor, J.B. Pritzker, championing legalization efforts and using his gubernatorial powers to enact cannabis reform, such as pardoning over 11,000 low-level cannabis offenses the day before recreational legalization.
11,017 misdemeanor convictions represent individuals who have carried around with them a stain on their records for possessing less than 30 grams of cannabis, a stain that has very often prevented them from obtaining housing or jobs or benefits. Today, we lift the burden on the first 11,017 of those people.
Pritzker and his administration are so proud of their diversity in cannabis. They even have another quote from Pritzker himself plastered across the homepage of illinois.gov/cannabis. From day one of their recreational program, Illinois legislatures put a special focus on social equity. In a press conference a couple weeks before January 1st, Governor Pritzker said, "We want the industry to be diverse. We have black and brown people. We want people who've been left out and left behind to have a real opportunity not only to benefit from this new industry, but to create new millionaires in the black community, in the Latino community, all across this state." As part of the greater Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, the social equity programs directly include those people and entire communities affected by the war on drugs. It gives those who've been charged with possession of over a pound and their family members a prioritized opportunity to have a business in the Illinois cannabis industry, an industry that's made over $121 million as of May 2020, only 5 months into recreational legalization. Those same regulations even include the employees of the business as well. There's many services offered, including both financial and technical services. Moreover, the Illinois government provides a map detailing exactly what areas are considered disproportionately impacted areas, so you could immediately tell if you qualify. But we have to ask, has the social equity program been successful? To understand more about Illinois' social equity program, we had the honor of speaking with Cannabis Equity IL, a social equity advocacy group. Their president, Doug Kelly, describes having fading optimism in the social equity process.
But everybody was pretty much happy when it first rolled out, thinking that the help and the technical assistance and the funding would be there. But as time went on, we began to see things different.
Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights member and counsel to Cannabis Equity IL, Akele Parnell describes concerns over possible abuses and exploitations in the social equity program.
There's plenty of ways to, for lack of a better word, exploit the program. And so a lot of people could take advantage of, the social equity program intended for, communities, for people from communities that were disproportionately impacted. But certainly other people would qualify and take advantage of the point system and all that. And I just think once this next round of licenses come out, then we'll get to see have a clearer picture of how effective it was.
In fact, both Kelly and Parnell describe a very complicated application process for the applicants they know.
The application was long, and a lot of people didn't quite understand the application, so they had to hire lawyers and things like that to facilitate it. So that was a charge a lot of people going in didn't understand or didn't know. So at the end of the process, they just found it to be very tedious and difficult.
I applied with some teams on both rounds, worked with different teams, had clients, all that stuff. And yeah, it was hard. It's a lot of work. I can't imagine people trying to do it with a regular job who aren't attorneys. and stuff.
The help wasn't there in the beginning when they really needed it. So it was kind of thrown in at the end. Okay, now all these resources are available, but people had already spent money, tons of money, and a lot of the upfront costs is what really hurt people.
However, because of COVID-19, handing out licenses and the effectiveness of the social equity program is anyone's guess.
And it obviously hopefully will help the craft grow and the transportation folks and the infusers, but we saw thousands and thousands of applications for dispensaries. So again, how it could have been different, if we just waited a little bit longer, hopefully, we'll see.
You would imagine Washington would be one of the first states to have social equity in cannabis. A state so socially progressive would have included social equity measures way back in 2012 when Initiative 502 passed, right? Not so much. While it did legalize recreational use and purchasing limits, any mention of social equity is completely missing from Initiative 502. 8 years later, there's finally a social equity measure in the form of House Bill 2870. Sponsored by Representative Eric Pettigrew, the District 37 state rep saw firsthand how important these cannabis licenses truly were and the opportunities they provided.
It was really brought to me how the value of these licenses, one, how they were received, and then just kind of the overall value of them and how they themselves created opportunities for wealth for a whole lot of folks. And given the initial restrictions that the state laid out for who can have a license and requirements on how much money you had and where the building, all that stuff, it kind of eliminated a lot of folks of color and their ability to get into the business itself. And so once we started having those conversations, I really realized that there's huge value in these licenses, and it'd be great if we could open up more licenses or at least tap into the ones that either were suspended or weren't able to be administered to specifically communities of color. And the Liquor Control Board was in agreement, and they actually brought the idea after all these discussions, and so we'll see what happens.
A supporter of progressive cannabis measures throughout his career, supporting social equity in cannabis seemed like a no-brainer for someone like Pettigrew, especially for an industry whose diversity in business ownership is very lacking. It would provide minority business owners with an opportunity in an industry that's flourishing, even in the worst of times.
As far as the actual manufacturing and selling of the product, then of course, there's always going to be a need for it. I mean, even in COVID, I can drive down the street and go by Uncle Ike's or wherever, and there's a line standing. There are people aren't, they're not cutting the cost of alcohol or marijuana. That's for dang sure. So it could be very lucrative even in these tough times, for a minority or Black-owned business to be able to generate that kind of revenue.
Pettigrew also believes that social equity measures could help the ancillary cannabis industry, or outside businesses that cater directly to cannabis companies.
Or whether it's growth folks, whether it's farms, security, money, whatever it is, that there's these other industries that kind of spill off of that. But in addition to that, it just creates more wealth and opportunities for those Black-owned businesses that can then spend their money in places in the Black community, like.
Hey y'all, I just wanted to provide an update about what we covered in our first episode. As of July 1st, 2020, the newly formed Cannabis Compliance Board has announced that they changed the lifespan of Nevada's marijuana agent card to 2 years. Also, it appears you'll now only have to get fingerprinted every 2 years, so this undoubtedly saves the cannabis employees hundreds of dollars over the years. So yes, this is at least a small upgrade from the Department of Taxation's models. However, if you look at the yearly cost, you'll see it's $150 for 2 years. It's almost as if 75 times 2 is $150? You don't say. Also, it appears nothing has changed regarding Nevada's strict excluded felony offenses rules, meaning there's still plenty of room for reform.
For July's installment of Nevada NORML News, I'm Josh Kasoff with Irregulators. Y'all have a great 7/10, everyone. Stay high and stay classy, Las Vegas.